We got a quick turnaround on this beautiful New Year's Day. We putting in that work in 2024, man. Did the post game last night, and now we here New Year's Day morning doing our Monday morning reaction to that beautiful Steelers dub. Shout out to anyone in the chat right now. You guys are some real ones. You know what? I'm feeling good right now too. It could be 11:30 on New Year's Day. I'm feeling good. I'm locked in and focused. I'm ready to give some good takes. I'm ready to give some good reactions. Let's start with this. With all the hubbub going on and the Steelers win and us giving ourselves still hope for the playoffs in yesterday's game, we got to talk about it. We got to talk about it. The Mike Tomlin losing stat. We checked that one off our list for this season. Or the non-losing stat, rather. The non-losing season stat. Since 2007, Mike Tomlin still has not had a losing season. 17 straight seasons without a losing record. Shout out to Mike Tomlin. This is one of those stats. It's polarizing because you either look at it and say, this is a good thing. This legitimately shows why Mike Tomlin is a good coach, objectively, right? This is another reason why I want Mike Tomlin back for next year. No matter how this season finishes out, and I was saying this back 2-3 weeks ago, Tomlin should get another chance because he's a good coach, and the floor, the baseline for a Mike Tomlin coach team is they're going to be in the playoff mix each year. No matter what, we are going to be fighting for a potential playoff spot week 16, 17, and 18. I will take that all day, every day. But on the flip side, it's like, are we celebrating mediocrity in a way? Are we celebrating not what the real standard is here in Pittsburgh, which is competing for championships? Because that's been a minute. What is it now? 6 seasons, potentially going on 7 for this Steelers team, going without a playoff win. Like, that's not good. That's not acceptable. At the same time, it's still a good stat. And you know what this stat got me? That over on the Steelers win total for the season, 8.5. Hit on that. My betting account's looking pretty good right now. But speaking of Tomlin, and I don't know what to call this anymore. I think I'm just going to call this like intro segment. Remember, we settled on Steelers Deekly, but I'm over that. I think it's a little corny. Maybe I just call it Steelers Internet stuff, or we just don't call it anything, and I just get into the show like I'm doing today. But anyway, speaking of Tomlin, he had some remarks on who he's going to name the starting quarterback and is leaving it open, even though I think we all know what the real answer is. Says we'll talk about that next week. Right now, we're just appreciative of the victory. We'll give you guys something to buzz about for in the next 24 or so. I think he has a press conference today at noon, and I expect him to name Mason Rudolph the starter for Week 18. Is there any doubt about that?
I think Kitty's availability is less in question this week. I anticipate him being available to practice. That being said, we're going to leave the ball in Mason Rudolph's hands. He's done a good job, and we've done a good job in the most recent 2 weeks. We've taken care of the ball. He's taken care of the ball. We've scored points at a rate in which we hadn't done to this point this year. And with the urgency of the moment and because of those reasons, we're going to leave the ball in his hands. But I say all those things with the understanding that I know Kenny is very capable, and particularly as it pertains to this matchup, Kenny has led us to victory late in the game the last 2 times we played Baltimore. And so we feel like we got 2 capable guys. We'll proceed into the week the same way that we did last week, but just knowing that his availability is less in question.
We got the schedule out, and we're going to be the first game of the week. Ravens, you can't really see it that well, but we're Ravens on Saturday. It's either 4 or 4:30 time slot. And the NFL knew what they were doing with this one, because the games that we got to worry about is this Houston Colts game, although not really. That's the one that's going to be right after us. We just need it not to end in a tie. But this Buffalo Dolphins one on Sunday night, they're going to make us wait until the very last game to see if we're going to get into the playoffs or not. Potentially, because also could depend on the Jaguars. That looks to be a 1 o'clock slot on Sunday the following day. But here's the whole breakdown. Here's the rooting guide. Here's all the Steelers playoff scenarios. It's pretty simple. If you look at number one here, going back to what I said, we got to win. And then, well, no, okay. Yeah. Indy, Houston could tie. That's not going to happen, though. So we're not really worried about the Indianapolis-Houston game. I guess it could. Those are those type of teams, Indy and Houston, that could end up in a tie. But that's not likely. It's this simple because we need a loss from Indy or Houston. Remember that going into this week? We needed 2 of like 4 things to happen. One of them was just Indy or Houston get a loss. That's guaranteed because they're playing each other. So let's forget about that game. It really just comes down to us winning and Buffalo losing, or because we don't need both of these things to happen. Steelers win, Buffalo loss, or Steelers win, Jacksonville loss. And then we got, what is this? Steelers tie and Indy, Houston do not tie. And Jacksonville loss. See, some of the stuff just gets too confusing for me because I think there is a way. Look at 5. Even if the Steelers lost, Indy and Houston do not tie. Jacksonville lost and Denver wins. That's not crazy. So I guess we could get in with a loss. That number 5 is not bad. That number 5 is not far-fetched. Jacksonville loss and a Denver win. Man, I say we just win. We keep the good times rolling. And we get that Buffalo loss or that Jacksonville loss. I think that's the most simple way. That's the way I'm banking on. We got a few more things here. Mason Rudolph stuff. Let me check in with you guys, though, before we get on with that. How's everyone doing on this fine New Year's Day, the first day of 2024, the first stream of 2024? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to see what you guys are talking about right now. Talk some Mason Rudolph. Big Ben had some comments about him. And then I'll get into my top 5 plays from yesterday's game. And then I'll close it out one more time with the chat. See if you guys got any good takes. Jerry Green says, let's go Deke. Huge dub. Yes, sir. Malik Badger. Do y'all remember that narrative during the preseason that Mason was lighting it up? No, not really. Because we got to see him in preseason, and he didn't look that amazing. He looked all right last year. Like the first year we had Mitch and Kenny. Because he had that nice teardrop pass to Pickens in that Seattle preseason game. He looked all right in that. Jacksonville, didn't he lead a game-winning drive? That was week 2 of that preseason. I think he looked better in that one than this more recent preseason. That's the thing, though. And you heard him talk about that in his press conference. He's ecstatic to be able to get reps with dudes like Pickens and Damontae now. He's like, man, it's good to actually get legitimate reps throughout the week with the first team. Build that rapport, build that confidence heading into the week. Because all he's been dealing with all of his reps is practice squad dudes, 3rd and 4th stringers. So that's the case for Mason, or that was the case for Mason if you were making it. There weren't a lot of people making it. People are coming out of the woodwork right now acting like I knew Mason was it all along. There was a small pocket of people, but there weren't too many. Because just think of it. Going back to 2021 when Ben retired, or at the end of 2021 going into 2022 when Ben retired, if the Steelers were to have announced that, hey, we're not going to make any moves for the quarterback room. We're going to go with Mason Rudolph as our franchise guy into 2022. What would have the reaction of Steeler Nation been? It would have been an uproar. People would have been rioting. So, yeah, there's a reason that we overlooked Mason this whole time. There's definitely a reason. Part of it was due to his play in 2019. And I think part of it is just the new guys that we brought in, like Mitch, and then drafting Kenny in the first round. But Mason's here now. Sometimes it's not about that linear path or that direct path to get there. Sometimes you have some bumps in the road, some winding turns, and yeah, Mason's making the most of it right now. Ethan Leach in the house. What's good, man? Says, doing amazing, going to the gym in an hour and a half, and going to make it the best year yet. How about yourself, Deke, on that Seattle's pack? Yep, we were on that yesterday. Yep, on that yesterday, bringing in the New Year's. Malik Badger, this is a great question. Are Ravens starting their players? In my opinion, they should not. Well, at least they shouldn't start one guy, Lamar Jackson. I think they're crazy if they want to put Lamar Jackson out there. And I get it. You want to keep your players as least rusty as possible going into the playoffs. They already locked up the 1 seed, so they get that automatic bye, and they have nothing to play for in Week 18. So if they were to sit their starters, if they were to sit Lamar Jackson, that is 2 weeks being off. That's potentially them losing a bunch of that momentum they've gathered in the last month of the season for, the game that's going to matter most, the first round of the divisional. That you run that risk. But I think it's way more risky to put your guys out there in a meaningless game. I think you live with the potential rust. I think you live with it. Teams have dealt with it in the past in various ways. I remember the Peyton Manning teams of like those mid-2000s. They didn't handle that pretty good. They would actually sometimes sit out, though, more than 2 weeks at the end of the season. I think they would have like their playoff position locked up sometimes like 3 weeks ahead of time. They spend like 3 weeks off, and then they jump into that divisional round. And then they would lose. I mean, they lost to us in 2005. I remember them losing to the Chargers once or twice. But then there's other teams that it works out with. I don't have any on the top of my head, but like what did the Eagles do last year? I'm not even going to speculate. Did they sit their starters for the last game? They had the number 1 seed locked up. Obviously, they just had the divisional round, and then they beat the Niners in the championship. And, yeah, they went to the Super Bowl. I just can't remember what they did last week of the season with dudes like Jalen Hurts. But that would have given them 2 weeks off, and obviously it didn't affect them too bad. But, yeah, I wouldn't. If I'm the Ravens, I'm not playing Lamar Jackson. Definitely not Lamar. You might have to play some of your starters just due to you only having a 53-man roster, but Lamar's one of those dudes I ain't risking it for. Muggsy12 says it's going to be too hard to make the playoffs. Jacksonville is not going to lose, along with Buffalo. Those are both possible scenarios. It just sucks that we're relying on that right now. It just really sucks. It's a bummer. They're likely. I don't want to say likely. They're just both possible. Very possible. Jacksonville on the road at Tennessee. Trevor Lawrence being back, he's going to be banged up. AC joint sprained in his shoulder, throwing shoulder. And to top it off, it's not like he was doing that good before he got hurt. He's been on a slide. Hasn't been playing too good recently. And then Buffalo, Miami. That's a coin toss game at Miami. Now, Buffalo smoked them the first time that they met. But, Miami's got to be looking for revenge after they just got blown out by the Ravens. That's the thing. I do think the Dolphins are frauds. I do. Buffalo should win that game. Miami doesn't know how to beat an actual good team. They just beat up on the bottom feeders, and then whenever they actually have a good matchup, really outside of Dallas, and that one was borderline too. That one came down to the wire. You could argue the Cowboys could have won that game. Malik Badger says they'll probably play the first quarter, talking about the Ravens starters. They could. That is a strategy. I just don't even know why you would risk it for a quarter, though. You could do the whole preseason approach of, yeah, we're going to get our starters out there for like a quarter or two just to keep them a little bit fresh heading into the playoffs. Or maybe fresh isn't the best word. Just help keep them a little bit more locked in, a little bit more focused. But I don't see it, man. I don't see why it would make sense. Who knows what Harbaugh's going to do? Because there was the other approach. I think Belichick in all those years with Tom Brady and the Patriots, I think they played all the way down to the wire. They would play their guys week 17, even if they had those first-round buys locked up. And that worked out for them. So I guess, yeah, there's just different strokes for different folks. Train 50 says, I can see them playing it like it's a preseason game. Yeah, I just don't think it's worth the risk. And I say the same thing in the preseason. Like, if you got a franchise quarterback, if you got a stud at receiver, stud at running back, just guys that you know are proven and are, like, legit guys, right? I don't think it's worth putting them out there in the preseason. It's not. Like, what more do you need to see? Yeah, it's to knock off the rust, try to get up to, like, NFL game speed. But I'd rather just take that risk of being a little rusty in week 1 as opposed to taking on an injury in a meaningless game. Yeah, Train 50's with me. He says, I wouldn't do it. Doesn't make sense for injury purposes. If that's the case, it's going to help out the Steelers to get the dub going up against Tyler Huntley instead of Lamar Jackson, obviously. I think we are starting this game off as the favorites, too. I saw an early line. Aren't we favored by 3.5? So we got to take care of business, and we just need Buffalo or Jaguars to lose. Or some weird, like, tie scenario with some of the other, the Colts-Texans game. And I don't know. Well, let me pull that up again real quick. Yeah. Colts-Texans. If that ends in a tie on Saturday night, we'll be locked in, actually. We don't even got to worry about Saturday. But then, yeah, number 5, even with the Steelers' loss, Indy and Houston do not tie. We just need Jacksonville to lose and Denver to win. That seems too easy. That seems like we're getting away with something if we can lose and still get in like that. Because that's not even a far-fetched scenario. If Indy and Houston do not tie, if one of those teams win, Jacksonville loses, very possible. Tennessee on the road. And Denver wins. I don't know who Denver's playing, but they looked all right yesterday. Didn't they win? Let's get to Mason, though. A few things I want to talk about with him, and then I'll get into my top 5 plays, and I will check in with the chat, and we'll get out of here. So Big Ben, I think, did a live stream on his podcast yesterday, and the topic of Mason Rudolph was brought up. And we know whenever Ben was here with Mason, there's reports that maybe he wasn't the friendliest or the best of mentors to Mason. But remember what I said last week. Potentially it was all part of the training. Big Ben, being the greatest franchise quarterback of all time, knew that some of that tough love would be beneficial for Mason long term. But here's what he had to say. I didn't have an issue with Mason when he got drafted. I had more of an issue with the pick. We were a really good football team, and he got drafted early. I just felt like we could have maybe picked a player who could have helped us in that moment. We were still a team that was competing. I was not worried about him taking my job. That was not an issue for me. I felt in the moment we could have drafted a position, offense or defense, that could have helped us. Not a guy that was going to be a potential backup and maybe have the job in the future. All fair points. Very legitimate points by 7 here. And he says, when Mason played with me, I tried to help him as much as I could. Then he didn't want my help anymore, so I backed off. Early in the week, Rudolph seemed to reference the Roethlisberger-led room, noting that the current group of Pickett and Mitch were more cohesive and helpful than the past ones he had been in. Roethlisberger expanded on what he meant by Rudolph breaking out. Duck Hodges came in, and Duck asked for my help, so I helped as much as I could. I didn't have an issue with Mason as a person. Mason used me for the first game, and then he backed away and started doing his own thing. I was completely fine with that. Duck stayed, and maybe that's why me and him have such a great relationship. Yeah, I don't know. I guess Mason didn't want Seven's help, according to Seven. I'll just leave it at that. I don't know if I really have too much to add. It's clear Mason and Ben didn't have the best of relationships or dynamic. And this is actually what Mason had to say about that in his own words. I think this goes back to a podcast he did in the summer. But he said, I didn't take it for granted. There's not many players that can come in and learn from a Hall of Fame quarterback. He was a guy I watched, one of my favorites through college. And so being at it for 18 years, he had a mode of operation. His preparation he sort of prepared independently. I wouldn't say we were close, but he did his job, and he had a job to do. He's a team to lead, and I get that. There were plenty of times he would answer questions I had. There's no bad blood. We weren't close, but would you expect a 37 or 38-year-old to be best friends with a 23-year-old? Listen, I was thinking this last night. Maybe we did. I know I brought it up after last game, and in my post-game stream, where, did I get it all wrong the whole time? Mason had that direct connection with Big Ben. He had that direct lineage with the old Steeler way. Like, I brought all that up, but maybe it's like more legit that I was like leading on. Because even think with the Packers quarterback situation over the last like 30, 40 years. They go from Brett Favre, who's one of the greats, to Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers, even though that relationship was sort of rocky, there's a ton of reports out there that Favre and Rodgers didn't have the best relationships, almost like this Mason-Ben dynamic. But Rodgers got to sit there and watch one of the greats do it one way or another. He was learning through osmosis. And then he gets in, becomes one of the greats in his own right. And now you're seeing like Jordan Love, same exact path that Rodgers was on whenever he was under Favre. Same exact path. Sat there, waited. I by all accounts, that relationship was better than the Favre-Rodgers one. But he sat there, waited in the wings, learned from Rodgers, learned from one of the greats, and he's doing good. Like, I got to give credit to Jordan Love. He looks like pretty legit. I think the Packers are relying on him to be the future. But can't the same be said for Mason here? Obviously, it's a small sample size right now. Maybe his time just wasn't in 2019. He wasn't ready for it. But now, after all these years, it's been what? This is like his 6th year in the league. Got the chance to start in his 2nd year in 2019. Got to go back, learn under Ben for a couple seasons. Got some spot starts. Gets overlooked with Mitch and Kenny. Maybe it's just his time now. Maybe it's his time. And learning under a great like Seven, just being there. And that's something that Mitch or Kenny hasn't done. Mitch came in immediately with Chicago. He didn't start right off the bat, but he didn't have anyone ahead of him like Ben. He ended up starting his rookie year, had to become a franchise quarterback on the fly. Loses the job, goes to Buffalo, comes to here. Kenny, drafted 1st round. Our quarterback room is Mason Rudolph and Mitch Trubisky. He doesn't have a great to learn behind. So maybe some of this stuff, even though it was obviously a rocky relationship, it wasn't the best of relationships. I don't think that can be taken for granted, though. Just to be able to sit back and learn behind one of the greats. And then final thing with Mason I wanted to hit on. I just got some of these stats here. I don't even know why I got this next-gen stat. The chart looks cool. Obviously, Mason was doing good things. And then here's this one, Mason Rudolph over the last 2 weeks. He's 2-0, 540 passing yards, 2 pass touchdowns, 0 picks, a 117 passer rating. I saw one stat, too. Like, this is the first time since Ben's last season we've had a quarterback go for back-to-back games with 270-plus yards and also back-to-back games with a plus 100 quarterback rating. 10.8 yards per attempt. That's 2nd best in the NFL over these last 2 games, minimum of 25 attempts. These numbers, I know numbers and stats could lie to you. These aren't, though, right now. They're not. Mason Rudolph is playing, like, legitimately good football right now. And my dad said this to me yesterday. Like, he's like, Deke, next time you go on and do your stream and talk to Steelers, like, don't forget the other guys. Like, everyone wants to crown Mason and act like Mason's, like, the savior right now. But don't forget about the other guys. Like, the O-line's playing better. The running backs are playing better. The receivers are playing better. The defense, for the most part, is playing better. Like, let's not forget about all that. But I said to him this. I'm like, I don't think it's a coincidence, though. Like, the major change that we've had is at the quarterback position and having Mason Rudolph in there. And these dudes playing better, I think, is a byproduct of 2 being out there, man. Because Mason is taking these deep shots. Mason is playing good quarterback ball. Like, he's doing everything you're asking for and more. So, like, because of that, that's opening up the run game. That's making our offense less predictable. That's enabling our own linemen to get that extra step on the defense and the D lineman. And then the defense, you could feel it too at times. Like they're playing with an extra sense of energy. They're like, oh man, our offense, even though we're being a little up and down, even though we're letting up chunks of yards and letting Geno Smith and the Seahawks drive on us a little bit, like our offense is picking it up. So all it's going to take, can we just get a turnover here? Can we just make a big play here? Let's just hold on because the offense got us. And I just don't think it's coincidence. It's because we got Mason Rudolph out there at quarterback right now. He's playing good. He's playing the best. He has the best quarterback play we've seen over the last 2 years. Him, Mitch, Kenny. It's not even a question. Not even a question. He just put the best 2 games together we've seen from a Steelers quarterback in 2022 and 2023. All right, let me get to my top 5 plays from yesterday. Check in with you guys, and I'm hopping out of here, man. Malik Badger, shout out for tuning in. He says, lifted ones from YouTube. Was in Seattle. We took over their trap. Yeah, bro, I was saying that yesterday. Like, it didn't look like it was a complete takeover, but we had people. Like, I don't think we had majority Steeler fans, but the terrible towels were waving. There's no doubt about it. So for my 5th play, I need some music to this. I need some of that, like, NFL classic music as I break down these top 5 plays. This one makes the top 5 just because of the unbelievability of it. I didn't think I was ever going to see something like this in my life. I thought I've seen it all with watching football, but Damontae Johnson, I will tell you what. Look at this. This is number 5. This is number 5. One, because it ended positively for us. We got the review, and they said Damontae stepped out of bounds. We ended up keeping the ball. Like it resulted in net yards for us, a good amount of yards for us. We got the first down. So that's why it's in this top 5. But also, just I never thought I'd see something like this in my life. I've never thought I'd see something like this in my life. Like, you got Damontae, has the ball controlled. Let's break this down. Nice pass, Mason. Damontae, first down, has it, and then tries to make a move and just hands it over to the defender like, hey, here you go. Trust me, this wouldn't be in the top 5 if it stood and the Seahawks got the ball. Trust me, it would not be in my top 5. But just the fact I've never seen a play like this in my football life, and it ended up as a net positive for the Steelers, it makes the top 5. I had it included on here. Something I've never seen before. Next one, Nick Herbig. We needed some splash on defense. Back and forth game the whole way. You see the score right there, 27-20. And we get some splash on defense. We get Nick Herbig making a play, getting the strip sack, making it easy for our offense to put up points, go up 2 scores, and the game's pretty much over. Game's pretty much over. You still got to execute in those waning minutes, but, man, this was big. This one was really big. Shout out to Nick Herbig for this one. He's been making plays in the limited time that he's been getting, and this one was probably the biggest one. Number 4 on my list. And at number 3, Najee Harris with the stiff arm. There's probably another run or two that you can include from Najee's game yesterday, but this was the one. Because we got not only him doing the stiff arm, but we got Jaylen Warren 2 times for him. 2 times big runs. So I got Najee at 3. I got Jaylen Warren at 2. Look at this one. See ya. Sit down. Sit down. Oh, I'm just saying, let me just gain another like 5-6. Why not? Let me just gain another 5-6. Hand off to 30. Okay, looks like it's only going to be a 3-yard run. Nope. Sit down. Boom, boom, boom. Just we got Seahawks dudes falling all over them. And I guess you could even throw this one in there at 2 if you wanted to. There's an argument one way or another. Here's Jaylen with the stiff arm. Witherspoon, first-round pick. Get out of here. I'm undrafted. Get off me. I'll say this, like the Najee one, Jaylen Warren already has the Angry Runs gauntlet for one of his runs. Was that the Browns game? It was back in the middle of the season. This Najee one should put him on the radar. We need another Steelers Angry Run shirt. I thought Najee should have won that one. Remember Like, he took a whole pile, basically, like 10, 15 yards. This was actually the week after Jaylen Warren won. I was like, man, this is only right. Back-to-back Steelers on the angry runs. Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris were playing that good. I thought it was deserving. But Kyle Brandt decided to go with, I think it was Cordell Patterson. And it wasn't as angry of a run as Najee Harris's. So Kyle Brandt has a chance to make this right. Give Najee the angry run for this one so we can have two Steelers getting angry run shirts. Because if not, I'm going to think the whole segment's rigged. Like, you just want players from different teams in there to try to capitalize on all the NFL fan base out there. I'm just saying, there's going to be a conspiracy if Najee Harris doesn't win this one. But last, my number one, I got to give it to Mace, bro. I got to give it to Mace. This pass was money. Absolute money. You think he's about to get sacked? I was like, man, we got to punt this. Stands tall in the pocket, the pump fake. Off his back foot, he can't even, like, step into that too good because the pressure's collapsing on him. Throws an absolute dime. Great catch by Pickens. Gets it by his fingertips, hauls it in, rolls over. I'm saying that's my number one. If you guys want to debate me, go ahead in the chat. So at 5, I have the Damontae Johnson fumble on the sideline just because it was a play I've never seen before. It still worked out in the Steelers' favor. 4, the Nick Herbig sack, strip sack. 3, the Najee Harris stiff arm. 2, the Jaylen Warren runs stiff arm. And then number 1, the Mason Rudolph dime to George Pickens. How's everyone doing, man? How's everyone doing? We about to wrap this up. Okay. We got a playoff comment here. Nick Krasuski 2 says, if we make the playoffs, we play the Dolphins. I think we kill the run game and control the tempo. If we just do exactly what we did yesterday, teams are going to have a tough time beating us. Ooh, Malik Badger says the Steelers pushing Najee in the end zone. Yeah, bro. I'm just wondering when that stuff's going to get banned. It hasn't been banned for a minute. It used to be banned where you can't be pushing players all over the place. It's just not aesthetically pleasing. It's really not. I'll take it. It worked out for us, and it's clearly legal. But, like, I don't know. It doesn't feel like, an actual, like, skillful football play. Worked, though. Like, Najee, it was, like, stop, 4 or 5 yards short of the end zone, but then it just takes a whole pile when we push him in. I love it for the Steelers as, like, a team standpoint. It's like, all right, we got some dogs. We're, like, all in on this. We got teammates picking each other up. But just from, like, an aesthetic standpoint, because I'm not talking about yesterday's game specifically in that play. It's just not an aesthetically pleasing type of play across the board. And you see that with the tush push and what the Eagles are doing. Anytime they walk out on the field, you're like, all right, here we go again. We know what this is. Okay. Fran30 asks, any chance Steelers trade Pickens now? LOL. No. Seems like he's not a problem anymore, huh? If he's averaging $160 through the air receiving these last 2 games, I don't think there's much to complain about. $160, 2 touchdowns. Brandon P says, never anticipated Mason revitalizing our offense and leading the playoff push. I don't think a lot of people had this in their script for the season. No. Definitely not. Big credit to him, though. Big credit to him. Yep, you said love to see it, though. Here we go. Yes, sir. I will take it. I don't care where the good quarterback play comes from. I don't care where the good offense comes from, who's out there. I just want to see it. And there's no denying we've been seeing it these last 2 weeks. 30-plus points. Just the offense looking awesome. Like, you know it when you see it. The run game awesome. Mason playing awesome. Getting Pickens the ball like we should be. We were up 24-0 last week against the Bengals, man. We were up 24-0 at halftime. This game, we put up 30 like it was in the normal flow of a game. And it could have been more if Najee didn't slide before he went in the end zone. Shout out to Najee for doing that, putting the team first. But that could have been 37 right there if Najee just walks in for the touchdown at the end. Offense looks good, man. Looks real good. And the defense should only be getting healthier, should only be getting better. If we can make the playoffs, because we'll be getting Minka back. We'll get Kazee back for the playoffs. Hopefully Landon Roberts is healthy. Like, I'm good rolling with the Landon Roberts and Miles Jack as our top 2 linebackers. I think we can live with that all day. Because we still got the D-line. You got the TJ. You got Highsmith. You got JPJ. And then with Minka and Kazee coming back, you can move Pat P back to corner. And then you're working – probably our weakest link will be the slot with like a Shannon Sullivan or Levi Wallace. But you could also put Minka in there. Maybe Keanu Neal gets back too. We just got to get in, man. We just got to get in. Hopefully we do. But all right, I'm out of here. Everyone enjoy your New Year's. Watch these college football games today. Watch these college football playoff games today. Have a good time, friends and family. And 2024, going to be a big year. Hopefully it's a big year for the Steelers too, because we get into the playoffs and make some noise. But shout out, stay chilling, and peace.